All right, guys, this is going to be a chill, laid-back commentary, I guess rant of sorts. But I'm not even going to rant. I'm more just confused. I don't understand what's happening, I guess. But we're going to walk through it. Okay, so here's the news. Gotham Knights, the television show. You might have heard about it. Yes, there is a Gotham Knights television show. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, but wait, there's not even a Gotham Knights game yet. Why is there a TV show? Well, that's a great question. I don't know. But there's a spin-off television show about the game that has not yet come out. And it appears as though the television show is going to be ready roughly around the time when the game comes out. And the reason that I say that is because the pilot was approved for Gotham Knights today. So that is the big news coming out of the trades, is that Gotham Knights, the television show, is getting a pilot. Now, that does not mean that the show is going to get picked up and get a season 1, but it means that the show will get a pilot. It will get a 44-minute episode. They will have their chance to, well, it doesn't have to be 44 minutes because it's on HBO Max and not cable television, but anyway, they're going to get an episode 1 and have a chance to prove themselves as a television show. Now, one of the interesting things about the show, let me backtrack here and tell you what the show is about. And that might seem obvious, but it's actually not, because the game and the television show have different plots. So the plot of the Gotham Knights video game, as you may know, is that Bruce Wayne dies and his 4 sidekicks, Batgirl, Nightwing, Robin, and Red Hood, fight against the Court of Owls and try to uncover the mystery of how he died. In the Gotham Knights television show, it is very similar, but instead of in the fact that Batman dies, and in the aftermath of Batman's death, the plot is that his son, Damian Wayne, who we assume is Damian Wayne, they don't say that explicitly, but they say Batman's son, is then trying to coordinate with Batman's previous allies like Batgirl, Robin, Nightwing, etc., who are being framed for the murder of Bruce Wayne. And they're trying to get to the bottom of this. And the focal point seems to be Damian Wayne in that television show, which is fascinating, by the way, because you may recall who was trying to make a Damian Wayne video game. It was indeed WB Games Montreal. And that same studio is now making Gotham Knights, which begs the question to me, well, I'll get into this later, but part of me is almost wondering if the plot of the television show is actually what the plot of the game is, and the game description on the box art is misleading. In other words, it is actually true that the Bat family is framed and that Damian Wayne is involved, they just haven't revealed it yet. And the television show kind of is revealing what the game will actually be, which is that the Gotham Knights are being framed for the murder of Bruce Wayne. Now, I don't really know. We'll have to wait and see. They certainly haven't presented the game in that way. Maybe the plot of the television show and the video game are just different. Or maybe WB Games Montreal has been lying the whole time. Lying is a strong word. They've been intentionally misleading for the benefit of a marketing campaign, which is not unheard of, and I wouldn't even be mad about this because we know very little about the game, let's be honest. Like, we know a sort of baseline plot synopsis, but they certainly can have plot twists and surprises in there. Sort of think of like The Last of Us 2, for instance, right? Where we sort of thought we were getting a certain game and we did not get that game at all, and the game ended up being completely different than we thought it was going to be. But here's my thought process on this. It's cool that we're getting a television show, but my big red flag, and this is the biggest problem with the show, more than anything else, putting aside the plot and the discrepancies between the game and the television show, and is that accurate, and have we been lied to the whole time? Putting all that nonsense aside. This show is not a HBO Max show. It is not it is a CW show. Okay, this show is being made by the CW. Yes, the people that brought you Batwoman and I can't even think of, Legends of Tomorrow or whatever the fuck. These of course CW's had a few. Supergirl. I'm trying to think of all the bad ones. I'm really trying to highlight those. CW, by the way, has had some solid content. They've had some shows that have had really good seasons, like Arrow has had some really solid seasons. The Flash has had some pretty solid seasons. And then they've had some seasons that suck. And then they've had entire shows that just suck throughout. Like there have been some shows that just were never good. Like Batwoman was never good. It was always bad from day one. And then you have, again, shows like Flash and Arrow. It's like, oh, okay, this week it was good. Oh, no, this week it was shit. Look at the CGI. It's terrible. I mean, the budgets are abysmal on these productions. The budgets are so incredibly low. The CGI is terrible. I don't even understand how they managed to pull off a show like Legends of Tomorrow or The Flash, frankly. But here's the thing, and here's where I'm sort of going with this. My hopes for the show are not very high. I'm going to be totally honest. And you know what? Maybe that is a good place to be. Maybe that's where I should be. Maybe that's where I should be more often when it comes to my expectations for these things. I have very low expectations for the show, primarily because it is made by the CW, which has a track record of producing approximately 2 good shows ever. And frankly, I think that most of their good shows are outside of the DC TV realm. Like, for instance, shows that I'm not particularly familiar with but have pretty solid reviews would be like a Riverdale or something like that has good reviews. The Vampire Diaries has a huge following and fandom and had a lot of success, particularly early on. And the DC television shows, again, Arrow and Flash sort of stand out, but then you have these shows like Batwoman that just suck. Supergirl was actually kind of better when CW didn't run it to prove my point. When CBS was running it, I've watched many seasons of Supergirl. When CBS was running it, it was fine. And then CW took it over and they started doing some crazy shit with it. And, I haven't watched it in the last several seasons and it's now getting canceled. And the ratings are terrible. And then there are shows that they've done that are good. I've heard really, really good things, although I haven't seen it, about the Superman and Lois show. So maybe Lois and Clark is really, really good. I don't know. But what I do know is that CW does not have a great track record, particularly in recent years. I have felt zero inclination to consume the content and the television shows that they have produced. And that's not typical of me. Normally, I want to watch all of this shit. And even with HBO Max, you have these shows like Peacemaker that, at least if nothing else, they're bold, unique, creative, interesting. At least they've got some edge to them of some kind. The CW shows, many people critique them, honestly, for being like angsty teen dramas. And frankly, I don't think that that's the problem, particularly with a show like Gotham Knights that already is heavily featuring teenage characters anyway. And frankly, throughout the comic books, the most successful and most popular stories of all time with comic book characters feature stories from the personal lives of those characters, whether it be Spider-Man or Batman or, I don't think that is the valid critique of the CW shows, is like, oh, it's like too teen drama. That's not the problem. Like, the problem is the budgets, the writing, the low production quality, the fact that it looks like a fucking student film. Like, those are my red flags. Not that, like, it's angsty, like, what does that even mean? And even with Riverdale, people, whatever. I mean, Euphoria or something is too angsty. Holy fuck. I watched the first episode of that show, and that is just off the shit. Like, that is the wildest shit I ever watched. Like, literally, the first episode, there's like a 60-year-old dude having sex with a 16-year-old teenage girl. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So I only watched one episode of it. It's like, no thanks. It's kind of weird. But I don't know. It was interesting, I guess. But anyway, back to the Gotham Knights television show. I just don't know that I foresee this being successful. I don't know that I think it's going to be a good show. I don't know why it exists, but I guess I'm not complaining. I guess it's cool. Yeah, you know what? Okay, I think it's cool. I'll watch it. That's my final decision. My final verdict is I think it's cool. I'll watch it. We'll see what happens. My expectations are low, which is great because, if the show sucks, then great. I'll hop on here and laugh at it with you guys, and we can stream and do reactions, fucking 2016 style, like it was blowing up in the community in 2016 to do, react to Flash shows and Arrow shows, when people were blowing up doing that stuff. I never did that because I was never big into the DC TV shows, as you can tell. Not a big fan of the CW in any way. And it doesn't matter what they threw in there. Like, they tried to hook me. They tried to be like, oh, look at this event. Oh, look at that. And I would watch the events, and I'm like, this still isn't good. The CGI still sucks. The writing is still terrible. And that's the big problem, is the writing, which, by the way, this is, I guess I'm being mean because I met at a alumni meetup event, a UNC alum who wrote on The Flash. And she's a very nice person. And, we're still connected on Instagram and all of that. But uh, I wanted to tell her, like, hey, why are you not good at your job? Just kidding. I would ask that. But I was thinking that in my head, like, oh, so you're the problem. Like, and again, Flash is one of the better written shows. I'm speaking more about the C tier shows, like, Batwoman, for instance, which is just unwatchable. I mean, it's completely unwatchable. So, if this show's anything like that, like something like Batwoman, I mean, it will be unwatchable. It will be one of those things where you have to physically pry your eyes open to actually get through an episode of it. Or it could be like some of the things that the CW has done that are pretty good. It's kind of hit or miss. It either sucks or it's decent. And that's the other problem with the CW, is that nothing they will do will ever blow you away. Again, putting aside maybe Riverdale and Vampire Diaries that have big cult followings, very few CW shows have like some rabid fan base where it's like, this is the best show ever made. Like nobody props up Arrow like they do, Breaking Bad or something, for instance, or The Walking Dead even. So, and The Walking Dead has its own problems. Don't even get me down that rabbit hole. I don't want to go there. But, we'll have to wait and see. My expectations are low. And frankly, I would suggest your expectations are low anyway, because what I will say, and I'll end on this note, it is a good sign that at least WB is showing some interest in this property and franchise and IP, and clearly they think that the game is going to be successful because they're investing in a television show for it. So that's great. I'm excited about that. And I'm certainly going to check it out, so don't get me wrong. I just think it's, again, I just think I don't like that the CW is doing it. Why would I be excited about that? Like, imagine if every single movie a director had made, let's say they made, 8 movies, and you've liked 1 or 2 of the 8 movies that they've done. And then you're like, this guy's directing a movie. Aren't you hyped? And it's like, no, they've done one thing I've liked. No, I'm not hyped. And that's how I feel about the CW, is like, they've done like 2 good things ever. And no, I'm not excited. But excited is the wrong word. I'm anxiously awaiting. I'm interested. I'm curious, but not excited. And that's where I'll end.